Hello, it's Lion here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're going to be doing our wrap-up video for the month of April, and I don't know how long it's going to be. Hopefully it's not 40 minutes like last time, but it will only be films, and then comics, then manga, because I didn't read any novels this month, and I only managed to read about half of my TBR, and they ended up supplementing that with a bunch of comic books that I had realized I had never actually reviewed as like complete entities, and so I decided to review them and read them and make sure that I had things to say about them. So if I haven't reviewed all of them by this video, it'll be in the next couple of weeks, right? So yeah, let's get started with what I've been watching, and it's been pretty varied. Although the second half of the month, I definitely did spend mostly on YouTube, and I'm going to talk about some of the stuff I watched on YouTube because it is kind of more or less like long form content, so it kind of fits into this, even though it's not exactly, film or anime or movies, right? So I started off the month with John Wick #4, which was great. I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was good. A little bit long though. It felt like sometimes it was like, okay, you guys are overplaying these scenes a little bit too much. They're making them too long, but that is a personal preference. I did see that a lot of people really enjoyed this movie regardless of all of the lengthy moments in it, but I did enjoy it overall. I thought it was really, really good, but it did just feel a little bit too long for my taste. Then I watched Shazam #2, Fury of the Gods, and this one was actually a really, really good movie, except for the fact that the main character, Shazam or Billy Batson, was basically two separate characters. Shazam, like the adult version, Zachary Levi was a fun-loving kind of goofball dumbass, and then the kid was this very serious, like, the world is crumbling around me and I don't know how to deal with it, and I think I'm going to have to leave my parents' house. And so those things didn't really didn't mesh, but everything else about the movie was awesome. It was really, really good. There was a lot of heart to it. There's a lot of emotional moments that I really liked a lot. And so overall, I'm pretty sad that this movie didn't do that well, because I think it's actually a really, really good movie. It's just one that kind of was unfortunate in the sense that it came out after basically a resetting for the DCU was announced, right? So it kind of sucks, but it's a good movie. If you guys haven't watched it, I definitely recommend you do. But, at this point, maybe just wait for it to come out on streaming, right? So, yeah, then I watched Mando Season 3, and I personally liked it. I thought it was much better than most people make it out to be. I don't think it was as amazing as 1 and 2, but I think, honestly, the hype season for #2 was probably one of the best, and the lead up and the ending of Season 2 was of course amazing, and then the lead up to Season 3 was actually a lot worse because there was a lot of lackluster shows in the Star Wars universe coming out of them. I also think that the situations in which Mandalorian seasons came out was also pretty different in how they kind of ended up comparing to other shows, because the Mandalorian, the first 2 seasons, more or less came out while nothing else was really on the menu in terms of like watching stuff, where Season 3 came out after a really amazing show featuring the same kind of main character or main actor, although Pedro Pascal really isn't the main actor of The Mandalorian, but he is the one associated with The Mandalorian because of his voice. And so I think those direct contrasts made the season seem a lot more lackluster than it really was, especially compared to Andor, which is another Star Wars thing that I think is probably the best Star Wars that has come out beyond Mandalorian Season 2. In the Disney era. So I think there was a lot of problems with The Mandalorian Season 3 in terms of like the perspective people were coming in with, but also I do admit that there were some issues with the way that the story was set up and the way that it kind of worked, and I think that's mostly because they broke the system, the kind of formula that existed for The Mandalorian by having 3 episodes featuring him in the Book of Boba Fett, where he was basically the main character for that, right? So a lot of the really important moments that should have been in this season were actually relegated to the sideshow, and so I think that kind of all caused a lot of issues. But broadly speaking, if you binge watch it, you really won't have these issues, right? Because you'll see the development of Season 2, and then you'll jump into Book of Boba Fett, and then watch Season 3, and I think at that point, most of the issues kind of go away, because this continuous, like, linearity of the thing, of the way you're consuming it, makes it a lot easier to kind of enjoy the bigger picture and not focus on the minutia and the little details that most people are annoyed by. So that's my recommendation for that. Then I watched Blue Lock Season 1, I finished watching it, and I really enjoyed it. However, I do think that it's a poor representation of the manga because it has way more tools available to it, but way less impact and way less hype developed through all of these extra tools than the manga. So I definitely recommend you guys read the manga instead. And honestly, it should be really easy to acquire this manga if you live in the US because Walmart and Target both carry these books. So assuming you have a Walmart or Target near you, you should be able to pick them up for less than $10 a volume, which is $3 off. So I definitely recommend you guys do that. Then I read or watched the first episode of Mashal, and I didn't really enjoy it. I thought it was a lot less enjoyable to watch than read. And I've been reading all of Mashal this month, so I've had a good time with it. And I think that having consumed the first part of Mashal like 3 or 4 times at this point, then watching it in the episode made it really, really boring. And so if you've never watched Mashal before or never interacted with the Mashal content before, definitely watch the anime. But if you have, just stay away from it and keep reading the manga. I think that's my assumption there, my decision about the thing, and my recommendation for you guys. Then I started watching Hell's Paradise, and I watched 4 episodes of it, and I like it. I think it's fun. I've been watching with my roommates, and I think one of my roommates thinks it's a little bit boring right now because it kind of has been taking a long time to really develop the plot line. Mostly it's just been like retreading the situation between Gabimaru and the chick that he's with. I don't remember her name, the Asaemon girl. And it kind of just retreads the same things over and over again, but in like different circumstances. And maybe that makes sense for the characterization of her. But in terms of like watching it, waiting weekly and then having the same thing retold over and over is not really exciting. So I do think that this probably would be better as a binge model. So definitely watch it that way. But I've had fun with it, so it is what it is. And I watched the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which you guys can see a little poster of right there. Although it's covered by books, so you can't really see it that well. But I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I thought it was really, really funny. It had a lot of heart to it. And I actually really had a lot of fun with the movie. So if you guys haven't watched it yet, recommend it. It's really, really good. It's really fun. And it's really nice to have this like low stakes, I would say, kind of fantasy movie to compete with all of the superhero and sci-fi type things that we see all the time, right? Because I'm more of a fantasy guy overall. I really enjoy sci-fi too, but fantasy is my bread and butter. And I feel like most of the time, I don't really get to see fantasy movies all that much, right? So it was really, really nice to have this fantasy movie that was really fun and enjoyable. And it's one that doesn't really require connection to a source material or anything like that, because I'm not really a Dungeons and Dragons guy. I mean, I enjoy it to an extent. I like watching people play it. I like, watching shows related to D&D, like Vox Machina and stuff like that. But I've never really played it, and I didn't really know the lore or read any of the books, right? So the fact that I could go watch this movie, enjoy it, understand it, and understand that there was a lot of references being made, but that it didn't really affect my enjoyment if I didn't get them, was really, really awesome. So I definitely recommend you guys go watch this one for sure. And then I started watching Ranking of Kings Season 2, the Chest of Courage or whatever it's called. And it's really, really cute. It doesn't really have like a proper plot. It feels more like a bunch of little episodes that have very kind of cute and funny little situations that kind of develop the characters. So I'm not really sure if it's canon or if it's a light novel adaptation or if it's just an OVA to kind of fill the void between the first season and the second season. I'm not really sure either way, but it still looks really amazing. I really love how it looks and how it is. And I'm really enjoying watching it. So I definitely think that if you guys like Ranking of Kings, you guys should check it out. It's pretty enjoyable. Then I watched one episode of this Korean show called It's Okay Not to Be Okay. It's really odd. It was really interesting, though. My roommate liked it, and so he showed it to me. And I found myself really enthralled with the first episode. Not really enough to finish watching the series, but I might go ahead and do so anyways, because this summer I have a lot more free time. So I'll have a lot more time to watch and read things. So I think it'll be interesting, but this one was a really weird kind of thing. It reminded me a little bit of Wednesday, but like in an adult context. It's this girl, she's kind of very sadistic and emo and kind of weird, and she's a writer, and she wrote this children's story that kind of resonates with a lot of people, and it's kind of like a little dark children's story. And then there's this guy character, and he has an older brother that has some sort of autism or something, you know, some sort of mental situation. I'm not really sure what it is, but he has like some sort of problem. And this guy works at a like some sort of hospice that deals with people that have problems like these. And they somehow meet. This girl and him meet, and it's really weird. It's odd, but I really just found myself really enthralled with the way that the characters were made and acted, and I thought it was really interesting. So I might go ahead and watch more of it, but for now, I think the first episode that I watched was good enough. So, yeah. Then I watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always, and I was severely disappointed by this show, or this single episode. Look, I'm not the biggest MMPR fan in general. I am much more of a fan of like the Jetix era of Power Rangers stuff, like Wild Force, SPD, Dino Thunder, Ninja Storm, and what was the last one? And Mystic Force, right? That kind of era is the one for me. But I was still a fan of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Tommy Oliver is one of my favorite characters, specifically when he is an adult in Dino Thunder. But it's kind of sad that he wasn't in the show. But also, I just think that the show, or this like special episode, this anniversary episode, was just bad. Like, I understand if it was supposed to be like the original show, just with like adult characters, but I think that doesn't really work. And if you compare it to any other show in like anything similar, right? Like even if you compare it to other tokusatsu style shows like Kamen Rider Black Sun is way better physically and CGI wise than MMPR Once and Always, which is weird because you would assume that they know that this is a 1 hour thing. It's going to be a very important thing. They would try to get the best budget possible for it. And I don't think they did. And the story wasn't that great. The acting was fucking terrible. Like, all of these guys, except for, what's his name? The actor for the Black Power Ranger. I think he was the best actor. But even then, it was, like, very poor. Like, compared to, you know, any other kind of thing in the same realm. Which really, really sucks. Because I was really excited about this. And it was really a severe disappointment, right? So, yeah, and then I basically ended up not watching anything else because I ended up finding, or refinding, I guess, this D&D campaign run by this nerdcore rapper called Rustage, and I watched his Isekai D&D with Daniel Green, a big booktuber. I watched that one, and I remembered that he had another series that was like a One Piece D&D, and it has 69 episodes right now. I think it just ended with 70 episodes. And they're going to have a part 2, which focuses on like a second set of characters, I think. But I ended up starting to watch this, and I kind of got hooked, and I've been watching it like basically all day for the last couple of weeks. When I haven't had classes and things to do, right? So it's been really, really interesting. I've really had a lot of fun with it. And it basically has consumed most of my free time. Because I've been really enjoying it, so I've been kind of focusing on that most of all. And it's a really, really good campaign. If you guys want to watch it, I'll leave a link to it in the iCard up above. And yeah, I really recommend it. It's really fun. It has a bunch of kind of known people. It has like Lost Paws, and it has Teching 101, who's a big One Piece YouTuber. It has Rustage, of course, as a DM. It has Briggs. And Too Spooky was a big manga tuber back in the day, I think. And yeah, it's a really good campaign. I've been watching a lot of it, and it kind of basically took over most of my free time when it comes to, you know, watching things. So yeah, that's all I've been watching this month. Let's get on to what I've been reading. I'll start with the comic books here. So I didn't read any digital comic books, so let me just start with all of the physical ones. And to make it easier on myself, I'll start with the big ones. So here we have Forged issue number 2. This is really, really good. It's an adventure, sci-fi, space opera type thing. And it focuses on this group of super soldier women that have these giant mechs. And it's really, really cool. I really love the art style a lot. And this very big type of paper and format really makes it, you know, easy to enjoy the artwork a lot. So I really, really like it. And there's some really awesome scenes here that are just so badass. I do want to say that the characterization is a little bit difficult to understand sometimes because even though they all have different names, they're mostly always talking over like radio or like comms or whatever. So you never really see their faces when they're talking and when they're being addressed. So it's really hard for me to really understand who they are as individuals. So what I would have really liked them to do is either add a page in the front that has all of the faces of the characters plus the robot plus what they are, or because they did this in the back here, added a picture of the person that drives each of these mechs back here, because they gave you these like character sheets which tell you what robot it is and who pilots it and what the information is, but it doesn't give you a picture of the person. And I really wish there was a picture of the person, because it's kind of hard to really understand what's going on sometimes when it comes to the characters, right? So that's my real only complaint there, but it's a really good series. If you guys can track down the first 2 volumes or the first 2 issues, I definitely recommend you guys do so, because it's really, really worth the effort. So now let's move on to the normal comic books here. Let's start with Vanish 1 through 4. I did a review for this because this is the first arc, and it's pretty interesting. I saw someone, I think it was Chombley, say that this was basically if Harry Potter became Spawn. And yeah, more or less, that is exactly what it is. And it's really cool. It's really interesting. However, I do think that it's mostly style over substance. The plot line of it doesn't really, give you much. However, it does start to get more serious in the second arc. So hopefully that changes and it gets a little better in that regard. But the kind of real draw here is the kind of cool element of having like a Harry Potter type character plus a Spawn type character in one person, right? And having this kind of like magic superhero thing, and also just like the artwork. The artwork is probably the main draw for me, and I really, really like it, and I think it is worth the money that I pay for it. So I am going to continue to collect it for now, but that might change depending on the situation going on, because like I said, it is mostly style over substance, and that might not really work for a lot of people, right? So yeah, then moving on to Death Dealer 7, 8, 9, and 10. This is arc 2 of Death Dealer. This is the second part of the story, and there will only be 3 parts as far as I'm aware. So this is almost finished, and this was pretty good. They were in hell, and I do want to say that even though I liked it and I thought it was cool, I do think that Barbaric is doing the same kind of thing right now, and I think Barbaric is doing it better, but I think that's because Barbaric is a little bit more fun and kind of less sad than Death Dealer. So it really depends on your preferences there. But for me, I do think that Barbaric is doing it a little bit better, even though I quite like both, especially because I really enjoy the artwork in Death Dealer, right? So then we have Dead Lucky, and we have Dead Lucky number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 would be this one. And this one was pretty good. I think I just did a review for it 2 or 3 days ago, and basically it's this Hispanic Chinese woman. She was a soldier. She came back home after she had this very traumatic experience as a soldier, and she ended up kind of gaining these weird superpowers that kind of give her these electrical ghosts that she can then ask to pilot, robotic things. And so she's a Power Ranger with like a lot of mechs, basically. And it's very cool, very enjoyable. I quite like this story. However, I do think that it starts off a little bit slow, and it doesn't really get super duper exciting, but it is probably my second favorite Massive-verse thing, right? So if you like the Massive-verse, but you really didn't find Radiant Black to be your speed, I do think that Dead Lucky or Rogue Sun are going to be much better for you. So I definitely recommend you guys try those before you kind of swear off the Massive-verse. But overall, it's pretty enjoyable, and I do recommend you guys check it out, because I think it'll be appealing to a lot of people. You just have to give it a little bit of a chance and kind of give it a few issues before you stop it, right? So honestly, probably your best bet is to buy the collected edition at this point, the trade paperback, and that should only be $10 for the first one. So definitely give it a chance if you can. Then we have The Least We Can Do, which is one that I'm not really going to come back to, but I found to not be as bad as I originally thought it was, because when I started reading it, and I haven't reviewed it yet, so I'm going to expound on that more, but when I initially read it, I was reading it, one by one, and so I was mostly just focusing on the issues and not really focusing on the narrative of the story. And I think the narrative is interesting. It's this girl who is from a very high level of upper class, and she decides that the way that her people are doing things is wrong, and she wants to change it, but she can't really change it by following the system. So she's going to join this underground rebellion of different people, and she is going to try to help them through research in order to do that. But when she gets there, she realizes that she also has to be a fighter to an extent, right? And the problem is that she can't really get her magic tool to work, and so it causes these issues. But eventually it works out, and then they kind of go on a few different heist missions, right? The problem is, and I still think this is a problem, that when I was reading it individually, one by one, it felt like the story wasn't progressing. It was mostly just a kind of parade of these minority groups. Now I understand, and I am a minority myself. I am not American, right? I am from Mexico. I understand that sometimes it is necessary to do these things, but the way that it was presented here was just really not enjoyable for me when I was reading it individually. When I read it all in one go, I realized that, yeah, it does have these elements, but it's a lot less noticeable and a lot less egregious, from my point of view, when you're reading it all in one go, as compared to when I was reading it individually. So I do want to say that I lessened my harshness of this, but I do still find some issues with the way certain people are represented. And I don't really find it to be really useful, because it does these things where it's kind of like from the perspective of an American. And I think the people that wrote this are not American. They're from from the UK, I think. As an American, I find the way that certain things are portrayed to be really negative in a way that's not exactly true, or that is kind of a bit too harsh to the reality, right? Basically, all the bad guys are white, and then all of the good people are minority groups, and then there's this kind of very on the nose heteronormative people suck kind of message in the later half of the story. And as a heteronormative person, I don't find this useful, because it's just making people that are that way have negative feelings about people that are not that way. And so it's kind of weird to do this when there's a very clear kind of problem with these kind of thoughts, right? So I don't know. I think it kind of sucks, because it puts people at odds based on that in a fantasy world where the very clear issue is power distribution, right? So I don't know. I think it's weird, but I can't really expound on it too much, because I'm not really sure how to word it. So I'm gonna just move on and not dig a hole for myself unnecessarily, right? So moving on here to Red Sonja Unbreakable, or Unbreakable Red Sonja. And this one isn't really all that great, but it's not that bad. However, it does kind of lean into this multiverse, meta, fourth wall breaking kind of storytelling gimmick that has been going on a lot in comic books lately. And that honestly I'm kind of tired of, because it doesn't really mean anything. It's just kind of expounding on this weird self-fulfilling authors jerking themselves off kind of thing, where they're oh, we're the gods of these worlds because we write these characters, and these characters are eternal because we kind of have to rework them all the time, right? And so it's kind of really not useful. It's kind of mostly just very dumb and useless. And it's not all that egregious here. It actually kind of is slightly interesting, but the problem is that there's basically two different plot lines that have nothing to do with each other and somehow get connected in the last issue, and it feels like it should have been a story that lasted a lot longer, but it was cut short because it was unpopular. So it is what it is, I guess. Then we move on to Bella and Valeria, and again, this one is another one of those that has this kind of fourth wall breaking, hey, there's gods above our gods that write the stories for us, right? And I think it's a lot worse in this one, because in this series, Max Bemis, the author of this, says a lot of things. This series is insanely wordy, so he just talks and talks and talks, but none of what he says is meaningful to the story or to reality as a way of explaining his ideology, right? It is mostly just what I would assume, or what I feel like, is like a seventh grader that like learned a little bit of philosophy, now thinks they're some great thinker, and so they're just being very wordy and kind of using a lot of high level language to try to sound like they're intelligent, but they're really mostly just being very dumb, and they're really not saying anything meaningful. They're just wording it in a very obtuse way, so it sounds like they are, which I'm kind of doing right now unintentionally, because I really don't know how else to explain this. Basically, the author makes this like bard character talk and talk and talk and talk, but he doesn't say anything. He doesn't mean anything when he's talking, and it kind of distracts from the characters. And then there's this weird like girl power thing, but it doesn't work, because by the time the girl power thing happens, you've had like 4 issues of like tits and ass, and these female characters that are the main characters, Bella and Valeria, just having to like deal with these like, you know, kind of not necessarily bad, but like not good like sexualization of them, right? That they put themselves in. And so it's a really weird book, but I really like the artwork. So I can't really like completely hate it. I just think it's really odd how it happened and why it did. And I really think that it's one that really needed like 5 more issues to really be able to round out the story well and not have this kind of like very abrupt ending. There's also this thing where like 2 issues ended in the exact same way, which is with this like barbarian holding a like a AK-47, and it made no sense to the story. So it's really, really odd. I don't know. It's very weird. So that's it for all of the ones that I've been reading that were like collected editions or like groups of stories. So let's move on to all of the single issues that I bought this month. Some of them relate to some of the stuff I mentioned before. Some of them don't. It really depends. So here we have Death Dealer number 11. This is a short story. It was pretty good. I did a review for it already. We have Sweet Paprika, Black, White, and Pink, which is also really good. I like that. It was an anthology series. Then we have Barbaric number 3, penultimate issue. Next one comes out pretty soon here. Then we have Tales of Sci Fantasy. This one was okay, but the characterization was a bit weak. We have Moon Knight number 22. Really good stuff. It was about Tigra. I really enjoyed that one. Then we have No One, volumes 1 and 2. And these were really good as well. I really like them a lot. They're also a part of the Massiveverse, and they feel a little bit more like detective-y, kind of like more like a Batman kind of vibe to them, with like a more modern kind of like European cop show type feel to them, which is really, really good. I quite like that a lot. Then we have The Last Barbarians, number 3. I'm going to finish collecting this, even though I'm not really enjoying it all that much, just because I really like the covers, and I'm almost done with it, so I'll review it, and then I'll get rid of it and decide what to do with it at that point. Rogue Sun number 12. This is the end of the arc, and I will review Rogue Sun here soon. And we have The Mighty Barbarians, which is probably the best comic book I read this month. I really, really liked it a lot. It's really, really cool. It starts off with this character called Thongor, who is a Lynn Carter kind of pastiche character of Howard and Edgar Rice Burroughs type characters. And it seems like he dies, or he's connected to the initial issue with the story. And then we transition to Morgana Le Fay, and she's like, okay, we're getting overrun by these like dark, magic creatures. We need to find some heroes. And so she goes off to find a bunch of different barbarians and special people to kind of help her, right? So she recruits Nanook, who is an Inuit god character who can transform into a polar bear, which is really, really cool. I like that a lot. He's kind of like in like the Viking vibe, he kind of would be like a berserker, but he is not a, European character. He is a Native American kind of guy. And then then she goes and finds Burka, and then she goes and finds Burka is this woman, and she is a Viking that was a real person that was initially thought of by archaeologists as a man. Eventually, they found out that she was a woman, and so she's kind of an interesting oddity because it doesn't really fit in with all of the kind of traditional burial mounds that they found IRL. So it's kind of interesting. She gets added to the crew. Then they find Anansi, who is a spider god creature person from African mythologies. And then they go find Cole, who is Cole of Atlantis, the Howard character, as he's kind of dealing with the fact that his kingdom has crumbled and he is back to being this barbarian character. And it was a really, really good series. I really enjoyed that first issue, and I liked it a lot. It was very, very enjoyable. We have Dead Romans number 2. I'm liking this one a lot. I really enjoy this character, Honoria, a lot, and I'm very happy with reading that. Then we have Vanish number 6, and I think this is the last issue here. So, yeah, this one is really, really good. It thickens the plot a lot, so I'm very excited to see where the rest of the second arc goes. So, yeah, there's all of the comic books I read. It's a lot of them. So I'm happy you guys bore with me if you did. And let's move on to the manga here. So I didn't read a lot of it, so I'm not going to bother mentioning it because there's no point. That would add like 40 more minutes to this. So let's start with the stuff that I'm reading the rest of the day today, which is the last day of the month. So I'm going to finish reading Ranking of Kings. This is the French version, but I'm going to find it online and finish reading it because I started reading it the other day and then didn't get back to it. Then we have Yagan number 1, 2, and 3. This should cover the first arc of the story, so I'll do a review for that sometime next week. And that's what I'm going to be reading tonight. Now let's talk about all of the stuff I read previously. So I read most of this first omnibus here. This is the start of the third arc, so I haven't read it yet. I will finish reading this next month. I'll add it to my sci-fi month because Fire Force is more or less a science fantasy story, so it works out, right? So yeah, really good stuff here. Fire Force was awesome. You guys should check out my reviews for the first 2 arcs if you're interested in, but bear in mind that there are spoilers in them because I don't think it's useful to talk about stories without telling you what the story is about, right? So yeah, so that was the first part. And then I read a bunch of Mashal here. So here's Volume 1, Volume 2. I really like that blue color. Volume 3, this is the first of the purple covers. Volume 4, which is another green one, although they are different colors, even if they all look kind of the same from a glance. Here's number 5. And this one starts the 5th arc, which is the one I haven't reviewed yet. And we have number 6. I really like this kind of like teal off-green color. I like it. Number 7, also really good. I really enjoyed what happened in this volume. Number 8, which is a lot thicker than the normal ones, which is kind of interesting. And this blue color is real nice as well. Number 9, which finishes the 5th arc, and it starts the 6th arc. And then number 10, which continues the 6th arc. And I didn't get volume 11 this month, so when I do, I'll get back to reviewing it, which should start with reviewing arc number 6. So I'll review arc number 5 sometime later this week, probably on Saturday, so it doesn't really conflict with my thematic, sci-fi reading, right? So that's it for that. That was Mashal. Since I already did reviews for these, I don't really feel like there's much to talk about here, but basically Mashal is kind of like if you took One Punch Man and Mob Psycho and put it in like a Harry Potter world, and it works really, really nicely. It's also kind of a comedy manga. It has a lot of gags to it, and if you like that sort of thing, you'll really enjoy it. Do keep in mind that most of the gags start off initially as like a major thing, and then they kind of get relegated to between fight kind of scenes. So it does eventually turn into a more proper like fighting manga, but it takes a little bit of time to get there, and a lot of the jokes might not really land with you because they're very much like sight gags and kind of simple things that don't really, I personally don't really find funny, and I think it's partially like the cultural setup that I live in, but also the kind of issue of like it's just not my type of comedy, but I really enjoy the rest of the story a lot, so that's why I continue to read this, and I like it a lot. So yeah, keep in mind the mileage may vary with the comedy, but other than that, it's pretty good. I really do recommend it. Then we have Soul Leveling number 7, which is a really, really good volume. This kind of gears up for the final war, which is interesting because there's still 6 volumes left, so I'm curious to see how that final war is going to happen, if it's going to take that long to do it. So I'm very, very excited to see where Soul Leveling goes. Then we have Soul Leveling number 6 here, which this is the comic book version. And this one only just started getting into the Jeju Island arc kind of situation. So it still hasn't kind of really gotten there, but the kind of situation with the ants has finally started to become a relevant issue. And I think that the Japanese contingent actually shows up to Korea to kind of discuss what their plans are. And Jinwoo and the Japanese guy have a fight here. I don't really remember. I think that is what happens. And then they kind of get ready to do the Jeju Island raid. So there's a lot of good stuff in this one. And Volume 7 for this storytelling, medium will probably be like a very big, important part. So I'm looking forward to it a lot. So yeah. Then we have the beginning after the end of Volume 2. And I really wanted to not like this because it would kind of give me something to be able to remove from my collecting list. But I actually really loved this volume. I thought it was really, really good. There was a really interesting kind of mother-son dynamic between our main character, Arthur, and this like dragon creature, which is really, really cool. It was very interesting. I really liked it. I thought it was really, really good. And I'm very happy that this only comes out once every 3 months. So it's really easy to, or like once every 6 months actually. So it's really easy to collect, but it is kind of a little bit like something that I really wish I didn't like, but I really loved. So, it is what it is. I think most people won't understand why I didn't want to like it, but I really liked it. I thought it was really, really good. And I'm stuck with buying these really skinny volumes because I really don't want to stop reading it. So, yeah. And then finally, Dinosaur Sanctuary number 2. Really good volume. I love this so much. I really enjoy Dino Sanctuary a lot. And if you like dinosaurs, you probably should check this out because it's really, really enjoyable. And it's not a super high stakes like action series. It is mostly a very kind of calm, like slice of life type thing with a very specific focus. So I find it really, really enjoyable. So yeah, I managed to be under 40 minutes. So I'm going to stop the video here now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys read this month down below. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.